Chapter 10. The Power of Community in Primal Fundraising. I'm not just giving, I'm sharing. Giving versus sharing. Are we asking people to give, or are we asking them to share? This might feel like a trivial choice of synonyms. It's not. Giving can be arm's length, anonymous, and transactional. The giver and receiver are separated. The giver is higher. The receiver is lower. Giving helps those people. Sharing is different. Sharing helps us. Each person is both giver and receiver. It's not equal, but it is reciprocal. It is mutual. Sharing is communal. It means being part of a group, a partnership, a community. We can ask an outsider to give, but we can't ask an outsider to share. Sharing is communal. This means several things. Sharing requires membership. Sharing is visible to the community. Sharing supports community goals. Sharing follows community norms. Examples of giving versus sharing. Suppose a church member donates for their new building. He is part of a community, the congregation. The congregation is working together to fund a new building, so the donor is part of a community of fellow donors and other supporters. The congregation will use the new building, so he is also part of a community of beneficiaries. Now consider the same gift without group membership. It's a gift for a different congregation. They're in a different region. They're from a different denomination. He doesn't know any donors to the project. He doesn't know any people who will use the building. A request for this gift would be different. It's still a request to give, but it's not a request to share. It isn't sharing because it isn't communal. The donor isn't part of the relevant community. He isn't part of the community of donors or other supporters. He isn't part of the community of beneficiaries. This isn't just about religious giving. Consider the patron giving to a local art museum. He spends time with other donors and art lovers at museum events. So he is part of a community of fellow donors and other supporters. He enjoys the museum exhibitions, so he is part of a community of beneficiaries. Remove his membership from these communities, and the donation becomes uninspiring. It's no longer sharing, it's just giving. Principles from primal origins. Sharing is different because it's communal. This is also important in natural origins. Sustainable giving to unrelated others can occur in nature. Biologists model this with a game. In the simple game, two players both face these payoffs. I don't give and they don't give, we each get 1 point. I give and they also give, we each get 2 points. I give and they don't give, I get 0 points, they get 3 points. I don't give and they give, I get 3 points, they get 0 points. Each must choose before knowing what the other will do. Giving is costly, but if both players give, the overall outcomes are better. When players interact repeatedly, research shows the winning strategy. Lead with a gift, then act reciprocally. But there's a problem. This strategy is a winning strategy. But it depends. It depends on the community. Stable strategies. The game models nature. In nature, a winning strategy must be evolutionarily stable. In other words, if everyone follows the strategy, anyone else entering with a different strategy should fail. Consider how this applies in the game. Suppose everyone always gave no matter what. Everyone wins. This seems great, but it can't last. It's not evolutionarily stable. If a never-give player entered that world, he would win every time. In natural selection, never-give players would then replicate. They would wipe out the always-give players. Giving without tit-for-tat reciprocity is not stable. Oddly, charities often expect this unnatural, always-give behavior from donors. They keep asking donors to give without any signals of reciprocity. In the game and in nature, this giving behavior is deadly. For the charity, moving from giving to sharing also means delivering value to donors. In the game, an always-give strategy is not stable. In contrast, reciprocal altruism is stable. You give first. This is altruism. Then you do whatever that player did to you last time. This is reciprocal altruism. This world can become universally altruistic. Everyone shares with everyone else, except no one shares with the bad actors. This world is stable. Suppose a never-give player enters. That player wins round 1 but loses all repeated rounds. Meanwhile, the reciprocal altruism players will be sharing with each other. They will be getting further ahead of the never-give player. In natural selection, the never-give player disappears. The dark side. But now let's go to the dark side. Suppose the world is different. Now it's composed entirely of never-give players. What happens to a new reciprocal altruism player? Every time he encounters a new player, he loses. Then he stops giving to that player. But he takes many losses the other players don't. He finishes last. This never-give world is also stable. No new player can win against it. Return of the altruists. Is this never-give world permanently stuck? Not necessarily. The never-give world is stable. No new player can win against it, but a new community of players can. Again, suppose everyone plays never give. Next, a new cluster of reciprocal altruists enters. Whenever possible, they interact with each other. Their mutual sharing pushes them ahead of the never-give players. Because they enter as a community, they will dominate the never-give players. Game theory researchers explain, quote, altruists can survive in such a never-share world if they are grouped together, so that the benefits of altruism are enjoyed primarily by other altruists who then earn relatively high payoffs and are imitated, close quote. Reciprocal altruists can win, even in a dark, never-share world. They can win, but only if they enter as a community. The reverse process doesn't work. Researchers explain, quote, the gear wheels of social evolution have a ratchet, close quote. Once reciprocal altruism becomes dominant, a cluster of never-give players can't invade. Even if never-give players enter as a community, it wouldn't matter. Their community isn't helpful. It's non-cooperative. Community without sharing is useless. The power of community. Indirect reciprocity. In the game, sustainable giving requires community. A single altruist, even a reciprocal one, is vulnerable. But a community of reciprocal altruists is strong and stable. A sharing, reciprocal community does something else. It increases the consequences of the giving decision. So far, the game has been focused only on direct interactions between two players. This is called direct reciprocity. Simply put, this means you shared with me, therefore I share with you. Or you didn't share with me, therefore I don't share with you. When giving is visible to a reciprocal community, this changes things. It allows indirect reciprocity. This means You shared with him, therefore I share with you. Or, you didn't share with him, therefore I don't share with you. Before, the reaction to a giving decision was limited. It was limited to one other player. That player might not be encountered again frequently. He might even leave or die. But an enduring community can last forever. The payback from one player is limited. The potential payback from an entire community is exponentially larger. Fundraiser as builder of community. The charity can serve as a greenhouse for this community building. Donors can build alliances with the charity and its supporters. Sometimes they can do this with the charity's beneficiaries too. As these relationships arise, donors become part of a group. They move from giving to sharing. This is valuable because group members help each other. The natural tendency to benefit group members arises repeatedly in experiments. It even happens when the other group members are randomly assigned and anonymous. Allowing future cooperation among group members makes the effect even stronger. It can start simple. Just using group language helps. In one experiment, calling a potential donor and recipient, quote, a two-member group, increased donations by 15%. Describing the gift as dividing funds among a two-member group increased donations by 29%. Community support matters. One signal of indirect reciprocity is audience encouragement. In experiments, encouragement from others, such as other donors, increases giving. People are more likely to give when other players make approving statements or indicate that they also plan to give. This encouragement to give was even more powerful when it came from group leaders. This was especially true if the leaders were elected. One meta-analysis looked at over 100 experiments using variations of the primal giving game. It found that giving increased whenever conversations between prospective donors were allowed. Even in the lab, building donor community through dialogue increases giving. Encouragement from others works, but it is only a signal of future indirect reciprocity. If future behavior contradicts the signal, it becomes meaningless. Thus, in experiments, the effect of verbal encouragement fades or disappears when the primal giving game is repeated. Over time, giving depends upon the actual experience resulting from the gift. In the same way, a charity's words and phrases can help to encourage an initial gift. But if the donor's experience ultimately wasn't worth the initial gift, he is unlikely to make another one. Enhanced identity. Sharing delivers more value to the donor than just giving. In formal terms, it delivers more indirect reciprocity. It does this through shared membership in a community. But sharing also delivers a higher level of enhanced identity. Identity comes, at least in part, from group affiliations. It comes from communities. Effective sharing enhances the donor's community, the donor's connection with that community, and the donor's standing in that community. Consider these benefits in terms of the universal hero story. The ending of that story is always the same. The hero returns to a place of beginning with a gift to improve that world. This is not merely giving. This is sharing. The donor's original world is the source of his original identity. The concluding gift enhances the hero's original world, the hero's connection with that original world, and the hero's standing in that original world. The universal hero story is the story of enhanced identity. It's a story, ultimately, not just of giving, but of sharing. Billions. These story elements are powerful. Their power goes beyond just games and experiments. It goes beyond just small gift decisions. One study analyzed the letters accompanying 187 billionaires' giving pledge commitments. These were pledges to give at least half of their wealth to charity. Most letters included two elements. First, they included an origin story. The letters referenced family upbringing as the source motivating generosity. The donors' giving stories started with their original identities. In the hero story, this is the original world. Second, they referenced a desire not to give, but to give back. Giving back is different than giving. It is a circular process. It is a form of sharing. Giving back requires a community. In the hero story, the hero returns to the original world with a gift. The idea of sharing is powerful. It's powerful in the lab. It's powerful in gifts of small amounts, and it's powerful with gifts of billions. Next step. Moving from giving to sharing requires community. Building that community can be an important part of fundraising, but community doesn't spontaneously produce donations. Fundraising still requires asking. To harness the power of community, that ask must be communal. It must be visible to the community. It must benefit the community or the community's goals. It must follow the community's norms. The next chapter looks at this issue.